Welcome to the SWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. We're here with a new guest host, Tiffany Uman, who's going to give her introduction. So she comes from from a background in marketing and has recently transitioned into a role in career coaching. So Tiffany, if you don't mind sharing a little bit of what you're doing now, and then we'll get into a little bit of your backstory.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me, Luki. It's great to be here with you. And thank you for everyone tuning in. So as Luki said, my name's Tiffany Uman, and I'm recently transitioning out of an almost 13-year career in the corporate space at my Fortune 500 company, being L'Oreal, so the #1 beauty company in the world. And in the last year or so, I officially embarked on becoming a career strategy coach alongside my corporate role, which was something I was always kind of doing in my corporate role. The part that I loved the most about my work was developing and growing my teams to succeed. And it just was building this urge in me to help even more young professionals as much as I can. And so that's really my core focus now, is doubling down on my career strategy coaching, both from one-to-one programs, group coaching programs, on-demand support, really whatever you need to be as best guided from someone who's been in your shoes, who's kind of walked that walk, talk that talk, and can really relate to what you're going through and share learnings that I almost wish I had when I started out, to help you be best positioned for everything you want to achieve in your career. So that's a little bit where I'm at right now.
That's amazing. And Tiffany and I had met, I think, on a panel where we were talking about kind of career journeys and things like that. And it's interesting to see how you've taken the leap to kind of go down that path and explore it for full time. But I'd love to take a step back and kind of learn about Tiffany growing up. So as a kid, what was she like? Was she always interested in marketing? Was she always kind of happy, bubbly, and smiling? Or was there like a different origin story for her?
Yeah, I love that question. So the coaching part came much later. I wish I could say I knew from, age 4, I wanted to do that, but no, I'd say generally from personality standpoint, a lot of the traits I carry with me to this day started from a very young age. So if you know me, or if you're getting to know me, you'll easily and quickly learn that I'm generally a very happy, optimistic person. That's something that's kind of been built in me from a young age, to bring that optimistic attitude, positivity, that glass half full, I should say, type of mindset. And I'd say I got that a lot from my parents, especially my mom, who was generally very, very happy and cheerful and bubbly, and that kind of implicated me as a person growing up. Some other traits, I'd say I was generally pretty easygoing, very organized compared to the siblings in my family. I have 2 older sisters, and they never really knew where I came from. They always thought I was adopted because I was very organized and neat, and just had a bit of a different rigor than they had. So it seemed like we were quite different, but also very similar in many ways as well. Even something as silly, Luki, as the fact that growing up, like, I loved fruit, when all of my friends would love junk food and chips and this and that, and I would always be the one at a party or at a friend's house asking for the grapes or a strawberry or something like that. So just always kind of a little bit different, I would say, but I just genuinely really cared for relationships from a young age. I really valued the friendships that I had, my family relationships as well. And something that, might be surprising with kind of where I ended up in my career, looking back to where I started at a young age, school was actually really tough for me, even back in the elementary school days, partially because I was the youngest in my grade. So I'm born in September and just missed that cutoff to get into the next grade where I would have been the oldest. So that kind of year behind really took a toll on me in those earlier years, where I needed a lot of extra help, a lot of extra tutoring, honestly, until about early high school. It was only about into grade 8 that I finally started kind of shifting gears and things fell into place. And ironically enough, academics became a real strong suit for me. And it's particularly even math, which was something that I had a lot of trouble with early on. And that's just really inspiring for me looking back, and for anyone who's tuning in, that what might seem as like something holding you back at one point, or something that's really marked you in a certain stage in your career or life, isn't something that you have to carry with you forever. There's always ways to push past and redefine the outcomes that you want for yourself. And that's a really important learning, I would say, that I took from that childhood experience.
That's amazing. I don't know if how much of our audience is kind of in the K-8 time frame, but maybe we'll get to that point. But it's good to know that things can change and things can improve and all of that. But I'd love if you kind of delved a little bit deeper into kind of growing up in that kind of different household. So it's a positive household, easygoing and stuff like that. But you mentioned how your sisters were a little bit different in terms of organized, that they weren't. Was that ever kind of an issue, or is it a challenge, or is that just something, oh, I mean, that's okay? Because it sounds like that those differences were something that kind of helped you thrive. So was that like liking fruit and not wanting the chips or popcorn or whatever it is, that might have set you apart? So can you talk a little bit about your experiences in terms of that?
Yeah, I love that point. And I think at the outset, in the earlier stages, it was something that created a lot of disconnection. I'm 6 years younger than my oldest sister and 4 years younger than my middle sister. And I always wanted to be so close to them. They were very close because they were just about 1.5 years apart. And so these types of differences almost like magnified that distance, where I just wanted to hang out with them or be with them. And they always kind of saw me as that younger sister that, was too young to be with them. And that kind of hurt growing up a little bit, because I was so desperate to kind of get their alignment with me and validation with me and everything. But what I would say is, once we were all within our 20s and up, age just went out the window. And I can't even pinpoint, Luki, like exactly when it happened, but it happened. And it's as if those earlier years and that distance wasn't even there. Like, we are closer than ever. They actually both look up to me, even though I'm the youngest one, because in many ways they've seen a big maturity in me and how I've approached my life and my career. I'm also the only business person from a child standpoint in my family. Like, my father is a chartered accountant, but my oldest sister is a clinical psychologist. My middle sister started in culinary world and is now in advertising and copywriting. So from a business standpoint, I'm kind of the lone wolf, if you will. But I think that's helped me a lot to bring a different perspective to them. And part of my own personality traits being very empathic, being a really good listener and just wanting to help, which is a lot of the inspiration as to why I got into my career strategy coaching, is to genuinely help people. Those are the things they really appreciate in me, and what's helped us bond a lot more, I'd say, into our 20s and now into the 30s and 40s for them as well.
That's amazing. So it seems like that you were able to take those differences and kind of build on them, turn it into strengths, and now tables have turned a little bit where they're all looking up to you, and being successful in your career, that they're hoping to model or just learn from that. I wanted to pick a little bit on you mentioned that it was tough kind of in elementary school up to about grade 8, and then you said like it just started falling into place. Like, can you describe that in terms of like, is it like an awakening, or just eventually things started making sense, or like, what is that like? Because I know there's a lot of folks who, I mean, they might struggle in school or whatever, and they get into that point where, well, maybe it's the fundamentals, and then that kind of hockey stick where like just go zoop and go up. So it sounds like you had a little bit of that, but like, what was that, and how did you even get through the struggles in terms of like, well, you had the tutor, you had trouble with math or whatever. That must not have been easy. So can you walk us through a little bit about like kind of the transition point from like things are more challenging, and then suddenly click, sounds like something happened, or was it something different, or is it different?
No, it was similar to what you're sharing, Luki. So I would say the confidence piece was probably the biggest impact that I had from that realization. And I think in part was one of the teachers that I had at that time when that transition happened was just brought a different perspective. And for whatever reason, I was able to understand it so much better than previous teaching experiences that I've been in. I was also very grateful because my mom had been such a great support to me in those years and really took the time. She had always worked, but worked majority part-time. So that gave her some freedom to be able to support me and help me, especially because my sisters were older, so they didn't need as much of that like dedicated schooling support as I did. So I'm really grateful for that looking back. But I'd say it was a combination of my teachers at that moment and one particular teacher that really helped from the math standpoint. And because that was the subject that was really impacting my confidence, I think once I was able to break through that and just see how things were coming together better, it helped implicate the confidence I had overall in the other areas of schooling. And then it helped me, Luki, to almost like hone in on the things that I actually really loved and wanted to do more of. So one of the things I love is public speaking. And one thing that I like doing with that in school was, some conferences that we did or competitions that we did. I got involved in theater. I loved, taking part in our school plays. And that was just a great way to kind of really lean into things that I truly enjoyed, but for a long time was not really letting myself do to the full degree that I wanted because I was kind of getting into my own head. And those are things that really stood with me as I finished off in high school, got into CEGEP because I'm based in Quebec. So that's something that we have to do prior to university. And then, graduating like top of my class in CEGEP. And then similar as I got into McGill, an excellent university with a lot of very impressive people surrounding you. I really held my own and was able to continue to flourish in that way and graduate summa cum laude from my class and get into the corporate space and land my dream role at my dream company right out of school. So I think it's all those micro moments that kind of layered on one to the other. But the common theme I would say, Luki, was the confidence piece and really believing in myself and not holding yourself too closely to things that were once an area of development and knowing that can easily turn into an area of strength if you're just conscious about it.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And that's a lesson that a lot of people need to learn in terms of adopting what's called a growth mindset in terms of knowing that you can do it. So a lot of that lack of confidence comes from the fact that, I don't believe I can do it. Right. And once you start down that path, it's a slippery slope. It becomes challenging. But that teacher who's able to find a different approach where there's not one right way to do it, there's a couple of different ways. So sometimes you learn differently or just the way they did it, or you miss the fundamental piece that without that building block, the rest of it doesn't kind of fit in. So keep at it, find different people, do different things. And from there, then you can kind of rocket ship just like Tiffany and go top of class versus someone who is struggling. So that's amazing. Can you talk us through a little bit of your journey to marketing, right? So the standard ones are kind of the community helpers, the doctors and nurses and stuff, and accountants and lawyers and stuff like that. But marketing is still getting in there in terms of like high school and university. But when did you first learn about marketing and that you wanted to get into it? Was it earlier on or later on or?
Yeah, so to be very transparent, I would say as of high school, I really had no idea.
Okay.
I had an idea of things I really liked at that point, which I alluded to a bit already, but things like, creativity, public speaking, being challenged and like stimulated to learn and something that would be fun and dynamic. Like those were the traits that I found myself enjoying in a high school environment that I knew would be things I'd probably want in my eventual career. But it wasn't only until CEGEP, where again, the prior years just before university, where I started getting exposed to different business courses because I went into business there. And marketing was the thing that caught my eye the most because it had I'd say the majority of overlap with things I genuinely liked as a person in kind of a more business context.
Right.
And so that's kind of where the fuel of that started. I would say going into university, I think my dad was really hopeful that I would take the accounting route. And I looked up to him so much growing up. And I didn't really know a ton about accounting at that point, but I still took accounting courses in my first year of university and very quickly realized it was not for me. Like as much as I enjoyed math, that kind of dynamic just was, I found very boring, to be honest. It didn't hook me. It didn't inspire me the way I kind of wanted it to. And so I remember Luki coming home one day telling my dad, I was still living at home at the time. And I told my dad, I'm like, look, I completely respect what you do. Like we need accountants in the world, but it's just not for me. And it was a little bit of a blow, I think, but he bounced back. He said, no, it's fine. I understand. And he was still a big help for me as I was going through those accounting courses. But it was in that first year of university where I was able to take more marketing courses and realize that this is something that I really enjoyed and I could see myself developing a career out of, or at least the starting of my career. Looking back, I developed an entire career out of that one function. But at the time, I felt like this could be a good starting point for me. And kind of funny enough, quickly, Luki, when I was starting on the marketing front in university, in the back of my mind, I was convinced that I wanted to get into advertising.
Okay.
I don't know what it was, but I was like, advertising, that's it for me. And I actually waited until my last year of university to take an advertising class. And from that one class alone, I realized that is not for me. Like I'm a creative person, but that type of creative didn't excite me as much as kind of being more on the strategy side of it, on the kind of client side of it. And so sometimes, and a learning for me from that I want to share with the audience is sometimes you might feel we know what we want, but just trying, testing, and learning will give you the answers that you're seeking. So you don't have to hold yourself so accountable to being like, okay, I have to do this. It's going to be this. And that's it. That's all. Sometimes just experiencing it is going to help you learn the things that you really like and that you don't like to get you closer to what you eventually want to achieve.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think we might do a future episode on kind of marketing versus advertising, or kind of demystifying some of the terms, because a lot of folks will be like, what do you mean? Isn't marketing advertising? But they're actually quite different areas, although they're on sometimes used interchangeably. So sounds like that you took some time, looks like the end of, pre-university, to really evaluate what do I want to do. And I guess that transition year is helpful because that's when folks are thinking about it. What do I want to get into? And you just happened to find marketing, which aligned with your interests. Was that a conscious decision, you think, in terms of like evaluating these things, or is it just more of like, yeah, you kind of gravitated towards marketing and it just kind of made sense?
Yeah, I was more the latter. It just kind of happened more naturally. And it's actually something I really fuel in my coaching too, which is really being clear, at least on what you want as a person. Like what are things that genuinely make you happy or excited or inspired? And because that's sort of always been a bit my guiding light, if you will, it more easily led to marketing being an extension of that for me in the business context versus another field that felt very like a very disjointed type of path for me to take. And I find that's where we get the most fulfillment in our careers, when it almost feels like a natural extension of you. I never want someone to have to, change who they are or fit a certain mold just to make it work. Like you want to almost reverse engineer that and do a lot more of that self-reflection, sometimes consciously, but it doesn't have to mean overthinking things. It could literally be asking very simple questions about, like what are your core values? Like what is something that's really important for you? And is there a career path that could line up with that? Is there something that you could see yourself doing based off of those interests or values that you have? And already just starting from there could open up a lot of doors. And that's very much the kind of thought process that I had at that stage.
It's cool. So now that you've kind of have an understanding of what you want to get into, then and have gone through the university process and kind of honed your skills and things like that, can you describe like your process of landing that dream job? So did you already know as like L'Oreal, or how did you find out about that as a company? And did you do like internships or volunteering or stuff like that helped you become an ideal candidate? Networking is often a common theme. What was that journey like to land that dream job after graduation?
Yes, I actually have a pretty funny story with this one. So to answer your point about internships, I did internships. I found that really important. I did end up doing one at L'Oreal, which you'll hear my story in a second. But I did do internships, and I actually decided to stay in university an extra half year so that I can actually fulfill those internships that I wanted to be able to get that experience under my belt with. So one internship I did was purely a marketing internship, and another was more of a general management type of internship. So it was a really good balance of different fields I was exposed to that I found really helped me once I was looking for that ultimate full-time role outside of university. But the funny story is that my year prior to graduating, I had signed up through our career center to do a mock interview because I knew I was going to start getting into the interview process and whatnot. And at the time, you could sign up to do it with a certain company name of your choice. And I saw L'Oreal on the list. And that was always a company that really interested me because I used the products, I genuinely enjoyed beauty. And again, going back to things that I found interesting, for me, that just felt like a really logical field, especially because one of the internships I did was in plane engines. And I quickly realized that when you're not really working on a product category that like motivates you, it's not the opportunity where you could like give it your all. Like I did very well in that internship, but I just couldn't see it being a long-term thing or even a midterm thing. And that's what kind of helped me decide on finding a type of business or a company that would be more in line with what I truly enjoy. But the funny part here is that when I signed up for this mock interview, I didn't think it was with people from the actual company. I thought our career center was just putting company names so that when you're doing the mock interview, you would have a point of reference on how to position your answers. But it was very quickly, Luki, in that interview where based off the questions they were asking me, I could easily tell that they were from the company. And it's not that I wasn't, putting my best foot forward. I just realized like, okay, no, this is actually like a kind of a real mock interview. And so that interview passed. And sure enough, like a couple weeks later, the interviewer of that mock interview gave me a call and was very impressed with how that interview had gone and asked if I was open to doing an internship at L'Oreal that summer. And that would have been like a dream for anyone. It was definitely the thing I was hoping to hear. But the issue was that I had already had a backpacking trip planned to Europe that summer, and I couldn't cancel, nor did I want to cancel. It was something I really wanted to do prior to graduating. And so I was honest with them. I said, this would be a dream come true for me. That said, would there be an opportunity for a fall internship instead? And at the time, they were only doing summer internships. So we kind of left it on that note of let's keep in touch and go from there. And then sure enough, that fall, I ended up going to our career fair at McGill. And I ended up going to the L'Oreal booth. I had my resume in hand and I started talking to this woman there. And she ended up being the interviewer of the mock interview. And she looked very different. So I didn't really recognize her quickly at first, but she remembered me. And then we started talking. And from there, she's like immediately took my resume and she's like, I want to get you in line for another series of interviews. And it was really through her and this kind of fate of, being at the right place at the right time, having her at that booth in that moment that I was there. She really helped me get that resume in the door and go through the interview process to land the job that I started that May. And that's really coming back to the importance of relationship building and putting your best foot forward and taking every moment seriously so that you never know what can happen. And that's a mindset I've really taken with myself in my career, whether, putting yourself forward in a very professional way, having strong communication skills and building up that network early on, because you never know how it could come back full circle to really help you in what you want.
Yeah, definitely echo a lot of those sentiments. So what the story is, at least I'm taking out of it, is make sure that you take advantage of all the opportunities that your career center, student clubs, or whatever is happening on campus, because they'll often get employers there, and sometimes it's just in name, but sometimes it's actual people who work there, and sometimes they're decision makers, right? So you make a good impression, whether it be a mock interview or even running an event, and they had a great experience there. People remember, people notice, and then it goes back to the staying connected part, because yes, you meet them one time at a networking event or whatever, but it's those people who follow up in 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, 18 months, and say, how's everything? And then you can develop those relationships, and who knows what sort of opportunities are out there. So that sounds amazing. And so you land that dream career, and then walk us through a little bit of the career path, because you spent a while at L'Oreal as you
Yeah.
kind of climbed up the corporate ladder. So walk us through a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so honestly, it's been an amazing journey at L'Oreal. And to be honest, choosing to leave to kind of take time also for my family and some personal priorities that we've made more on the personal front, but also allowing it to give me the opportunity to further pursue my career strategy coaching full time. That was a really big decision. It's probably
Mhm.
one of the most marked decisions in my career up to now. But going back to those early years, I had a really fruitful career at L'Oreal, and I'm super thankful for that. I achieved 7 promotions in under 10 years. I was able to really implicate myself in the change of the organization. I'd say in the last few years of my career there, I was named an internal transformation change agent. It was called something else internally, but that's essentially what it was for the viewers tuning in. And it really helped me to implicate myself on a subsidiary-wide standpoint, as opposed to just the immediate teams that I was managing, to drive behavioral change that we wanted in our employees, and especially to inspire the younger generation of talent coming into the company, where we realized as an organization there were certain things that we needed to adjust to continue being a very, very desirable organization and really listen to the needs of our employees. And I'd say my CEO has been such an inspiration in that, because he really, walked the walk and talked the talk. He was very in tune with our employees' needs and took a lot of pride in that, and inspiration in choosing these internal transformation change agents to help him guide that journey. So that was really an amazing thing above and beyond my marketing roles, that I've been very fortunate to have been exposed to that as well. But I pretty much started from the bottom, Luki. I started as a marketing trainee, moving into a marketing assistant, to product manager, senior product manager, group manager, all the way up to marketing director and senior marketing director. And I was able to be exposed to different product categories, from skincare, makeup, hair care, styling, body care, men, and all of that. So it's been really wonderful. And each experience along the way has taught me so many things about myself, but also in terms of the business person that I wanted to be and aspire to be. And it's a big inspiration as to why I started my career strategy coaching, because there's a lot of things that school doesn't necessarily prepare you for to
Right.
be set up for the most success. Sure, it'll prepare you for the hard skills, a lot of the technical skills, but there's so many skills that it's just not really focusing on, and it's no detriment to schooling. It's just those kinds of harsh realities that when you're in that corporate space, it can be a real struggle, especially in those earlier years. And it's the stuff I wish I knew earlier, which is
Mhm.
what I'm now really focusing on through my coaching and even my free content that I put out on my Instagram page or LinkedIn or TikTok accounts or whatever it is, to just help people navigate those situations a little bit more effectively and in a way that doesn't work against them or slow down their progress.
Yeah, I think makes sense in terms of all of that information. So I think that journey is great. 7 promotions in 10 years is obviously nothing trivial in regards to that, and having all that exposure and breadth, both on the marketing side and also as on the transformation side, I think is amazing. And I think one reason why you and I connected is on that alignment of, well, school is great for certain things, but it's missing other parts. And to your point, no detriment to school, because a lot of folks think, well, isn't school supposed to teach you this? And then school's saying, well, isn't that what your family and parents are supposed to be doing? So people are pointing fingers at each other, like, who's responsible for it? And at the end of the day, you are, right?
Yeah.
Wherever it comes from, if you don't get it from the family situation, then you need it from school. And if you don't get it from wherever, you need to figure it out. And that's a challenge that folks have to really understand, that it's their own career, it's their own life, that they have to take control of it. They shouldn't be spoon-fed everything and rely on what's given. If you want something different than what's available, then go look for it, because there's more options than you think. It's just sometimes they're a little bit more challenging and harder to find. So that's amazing. So, and that ultimately led to your transition, or your current transition to that. So let's walk us through kind of the current steps, or like what was maybe the decision making, well, although that's probably an episode on its own. The
Sure.
version of that, and then what's kind of up and running right now.
Yeah. So I would say, looking back at my corporate career, and again, going back to what I said before about those kind of core values that have been driven me and fueled a lot of my motivation, I realized that there was one thing that I absolutely loved in my corporate work. It was making an impact and leaving a legacy on people. And that was really the fuel that helped me to officially embark on dabbling into the career strategy coaching. And the approach that I took into that, Luki, was not so much on, the recruitment front or job search front. I see a lot of that in the career coaching space, which is amazing. Like, to each their own, and that area of expertise is needed. And I can certainly speak to that, and I do for many of my clients. But the part and that gap that I really found through my own experience was just all those things that you're not prepared for. And I helped my teams over the years navigate all of that without even really realizing it. And so there was a moment when I was doing that transition to coaching where I was trying to think back. I'm like, what are the things that I really found as pivotal that helped me to get to where I was, to have that fast track success, career growth, and do it in a way that was always putting my well-being first and allowed for that ability to be very impactful without compromising, mental health or anything like that, which is so important these days. I think especially with working from home, where there's generally a blur between personal and work life, it could be a real struggle. And so those were just some of those initial thoughts that I had. And I had gone on a maternity leave at one point, and I was really already thinking about this idea in the back of my mind. But at that time, my husband was starting his own business, and it just felt like it would be too much change at that time. And the security that, I had, and the joy that I had in my corporate work at that time just felt like where I needed to be. And so I kind of tabled the idea, but nevertheless, it was still in the back of my mind. And similar to that point I made earlier about loving public speaking, even from an earlier age, I always kind of loved the idea of being a motivational speaker or something that would help uplift people. And so I kind of culminated all of these ideas together, which, fast forward a few years later to 2020, was really the year where I said, you know what, like, now's the time. Like, I need to do this for myself. I need to see if this could even work. And that's where I said, let's go for it. I've got nothing to lose and possibly a lot to gain. And if I could benefit people's lives in doing this, that is, again, going back to that impact piece of leaving the legacy that I really wanted and loved for my corporate work. And so from there, Luki, I kind of just took a chance on myself. I also invested in a coaching program myself to help me kind of kickstart what I wanted to do. And that program was really helpful in getting more exposure in social media, building up kind of a more coaching brand in addition to my own personal professional brand. And I started working with some beta clients at the beginning to really validate the framework I had put together that had helped me so much. And just time and time again after that was getting such positive feedback, and the benefit it was giving to my beta clients gave me the motivation to continue going forward with dedicated one-to-one clients, which then led to also my current group program and other ideas I have down the line as well. But my core focus right now is a combination of one-to-one support and programs, group coaching programs, and also on-demand support for any type of strategic guidance that might be needed in more isolated situations. So that's kind of what brought me to where I'm at today. I hope that answers.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I draw a lot of parallels and echo a lot of the sentiments there, where I was in a similar path, long corporate career. And I think for me, what really drove it home was that, you know what, I really try to cap the downside, in the sense that if I tried it and it was a colossal failure, I could probably go back and get my old job back, or a similar job, or somewhere else, because I was employable. And it's more of, if I didn't do it, then I would probably be kicking myself for forever. So it's a matter of, is it now? Is it later? And it's always a timing thing. So if you want someone to have some stability, right? So if your partner is changing their things, both of you changing at the same time might not be the right idea. But after that kind of stabilization period, then yeah, like, why not? It's one of those things, because as challenging as the world is, there's tons of opportunities, and there's jobs out there if you really need it, right? So.
Yeah, I agree with you, Luki, and I'm so happy you took that leap as well, because there's so much that can be gained on the other end. And it might be scary in that moment, but I would say in my particular situation, my husband was a really big inspiration for me, because he has a product-based business, so it's not a service-based business. And there were a lot of ups and downs in that first year and a half in his own business building journey. And he never gave up. Like there were really tough moments where he had self-doubt, or was questioning, or was getting questioned by people. And that really inspired me to implicate myself in my own coaching. And, when you have your own vision and you stay, keep that eye on the prize and stay focused with what you want, and don't let, others bring you down or that fear factor kick in. If you really believe in what you're doing, which he absolutely did, and which I absolutely do, it really helps to push through those moments of fear or failure or nerves or whatever it is, to keep going.
It's amazing. So as we kind of close off, if you could share with folks, what are kind of your top SWIKE, the stuff I wish I knew earlier, if you could talk to younger Tiffany and any of those kind of moments of kind of doubt or anxiety, fear, stress, whatever. What are some of the ones that you would slip her a Post-it note or something, record a voice memo or something in order to kind of pepper up in terms of getting past kind of her obstacles in her career?
Yes. Well, there's 5 that come to mind, Luki. So I'll walk through one by one. I'd say the first one, which is probably the most important, and by the way, carries through in every stage of your career, not just at the very beginning, is don't compare yourself to other people. It's a very natural thing to do, a very human thing to do. And I would say, especially with social media, we're almost more wired to do that, because social is like a highlight reel of people's lives. Even a platform like LinkedIn, to a degree, you're constantly seeing people changing roles, and it's like this FOMO, like, what am I not doing, or why is that not happening for me? And I used to do a lot of that at the beginning, where, again, I was in a very competitive, dynamic Fortune 500, a lot of impressive people surrounding me. And even though I graduated top of my class, I got a lot of that self-doubt at the beginning, and it was impacting my confidence. And I found the moments where I was comparing myself to others were real downfalls, because it took so much precious energy away from focusing on creating my own lane for success, and made me feel really bad about myself, frankly. And it wasn't helping. It wasn't helping me be really a top performer in my role. It was clouding my judgment and preventing me from building a lot of the best practices that I fuel into my coaching to this day, of what helped me to get out of that and fast track career growth. And so that comparison circle, you just want to get out of it as fast as possible and really bring that focus onto you. Because what happens when you're comparing to other people, you're really only comparing to about 10% of what you see. No one is going to come out there and broadcast their struggles or the hardships that they had. They're going to just broadcast the wins, but you're only seeing the wins. That's your perception. So it's a very skewed way of thinking, especially if you're using that thinking to impact your own career path. So that's really the first kind of watch out and insight that I would definitely share to a younger version of myself. The second thing I would say is that failure is a good thing. I think we put so much negative light around the word failure, but there's so much good that comes from it, right? Making a mistake, failing is part of the game. And a lot of it comes back to that trial and error mindset, that you won't know unless you try. And it takes guts to try. And that's a quality that, as you grow in your career, regardless of the industry you're in, is going to be very well respected. If you're able to put yourself out there, try new things, take a chance, even if you don't know or are not sure of the outcome, well, at least you tried. And I'd say, look, this was a particular challenge in my case, because I'd say a lot of companies are similar to the one that I was in, where we do place a lot of value on wins and successes, and we shy away from failure. Right. But the thing is, you can learn a lot from the failure of what you shouldn't do. And those learnings can be almost as important, sometimes even more important, than the things that are going well, so that you can continue to grow and evolve as an organization, as a business, and as a person. So always try to take those learnings from failure and what you can do to just continually be better, a better version of yourself. The third thing I would say is trusting your gut. And that's a really key one, there have been many moments looking back where I didn't have the level of conviction that I really should have. I let overthinking get in the way. And in hindsight, your gut is a pretty telling thing. And if it's driving you in a certain direction, whether in terms of where you want to take your career, if you're feeling like this just doesn't feel right for me, but you're like sucking it up and you're swallowing that and just letting things pass as if it was normal to feel like that, you've got to be in tune with it. Don't ignore it. It's telling you something, and let that be a guiding light to where you want to bring yourself to. The fourth thing I would say is always be learning. I think it's great, Luki, even with, your podcast and your education materials and different platforms that there's access to, whether it is podcasts, whether it's YouTube, whether it's books, whether it's courses, whether it's different programs. Like, there's so many different ways of learning. I could go on and on, but know that you are always learning. You're learning from people around you. You're learning from your own experiences, and always feel like there's more to learn. That's been a mindset that I've always had that's really helped me to continually push myself out of my comfort zone. That when I felt like I'm kind of complacent, it's a sign that I need a shift, that I don't want to stay here for very long. And I think even when we look back at schooling, it fuels that sense of learning. And you want to take that mindset into your career as well, because you could constantly grow from pushing yourself in those different ways. And the last and fifth thing I'll say, Luki, is that you don't need to have it all figured out. Like, I work with a lot of young professionals, and the pressure that I see them put on themselves, and even what I put on myself at some stages in my career, where it's like, do I need to know exactly what I want to do at each, in the next year or the next 5 years or in 10 years from now? And that's a lot of pressure to put on your shoulders. Also, because a lot can change. And when you're taking that testing and learning mindset, it allows yourself that flexibility to change. So it's good to have an idea of what you want. And if you bring it back to what I said before about those values that drive you, those interests, things that genuinely excite you, that's kind of the good starting point to get you there. But don't feel like you have to have every single step figured out, or that what you studied has to be what you have to do for a 40+ year career. There's going to be opportunities to change and pivot and adjust, and that's okay.
It's amazing. So I have a whole bunch of things came to mind when you went through those. And for those that know me, I love quotes. So for the first one about comparison, it's comparison is the thief of joy. I think that's Roosevelt. I'm not
It's
sure.
Roosevelt, yeah.
Yeah.
I love
But
that one.
I do encourage folks to compare themselves, but only to themselves yesterday, right? So just for yourself, did you grow is kind of the key part of that. Because I do think you should compare, but only to yourself, to make sure that you're growing and evolving. And if you're not, that's okay. It's just a matter of what can I do today to learn. That the failure one, the quote that I love on that is, it's never lose, either win or learn. Right. So don't even label that as failure. So I often tell people that I say that I have never failed. I have just learned a whole lot.
Yeah.
Right? So sometimes that perspective to say, okay, well, it didn't meet your expectation. Well, maybe your expectations were wrong, right? Maybe you did something, or you didn't know anything. And it's really only a mistake if you knew about it, but you did it anyways, right? But most of the
Definitely.
time, you just didn't have some information. For trusting your gut, a lot of scientists talk about your gut being your second brain, and there's all sorts of science around that, where all the little bacteria and microbiomes and stuff like that in there are almost like you're thinking about it, but you it doesn't think in the way your brain does. So oftentimes that gut feeling is almost that emotion that goes through your body, and oftentimes it's telling you something. And if you're attuned to that, that can help a lot. Always be learning. It's definitely awesome, and definitely a mindset that I encourage folks to cultivate. The quote, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Because sometimes you've probably heard it younger or whatever, but you didn't actually internalize it. So one reason why I call myself a DJ for personal development is I might say it one way, and then Tiffany might say it another way, and someone else might say it a different way, but someone's version will resonate. And sometimes it's just repetition, and you'll get to that. And for the last one on the having it all figured out, it's that quote, life's about the journey, not the destination, that comes to mind, where enjoy the process, where if you're intentional about things and not so focused on achieving your goals, because the challenge with achieving your goals is once you do, then what? you're kind of, oh, okay. Whereas if you're focused more on the journey and learning and enjoying yourself in that, then I
Yeah.
think that's great. So yeah,
Love that.
looking forward to hearing a lot more on all the information that you'll share, all the wisdom and experience there. And yeah, thanks for joining us, Tiffany. And hopefully we'll have you back to talk about other things in the personal development, marketing, or career journey realm. So
Oh, I
thanks for
love
joining us.
that. Thank you so much for having me, Luki. It's been such a pleasure. And if I can end with another quote as well, since you just inspired me to throw one in, and it goes back to what you were saying and what I'm all about, also about taking control of your career success. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So you really have nothing to lose. Put yourself out there, trust in yourself, and there could be a lot of benefit that follows through from that. And thank you again. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, you can always count on good old Wayne Gretzky. So thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us on the SWIKE, Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Luki Danu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.